Take it away, Jake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Comics That Influence. I'm Jake Jacobs. This is my partner, Kurt Brugel, and we are the creators of the Turbo Pit Fighter comic series and the podcast, The Making of Turbo Pit Fighter, where we create comics in split screen. Nobody else is doing this. You can order the teaser, which is the first 6 pages that we're using to promote our upcoming finished comic. And in the meantime, this is our other series, which we call Comics That Influence. Obviously, I'm going to be doing Heavy Metal #1, but I think Kurt goes first today, and Kurt is going to be showing us one of the most famous black and white indie comics ever made.
The greatest comic book in the world.
Well,
have you seen any of Dave Sims' sit down fireside chats?
No,
have you heard or seen anything about him in the last 20 years?
No,
he's nuts.
I can't say that
he's nuts. I don't know if he's gotten on some medication. Yeah, I don't know if he's gotten on some medication. Well, he went down the rabbit hole when people were Me Tooing and calling out people's pasts and stuff, and then he got very vocal. Did
he have a Me Too problem?
No, I think there was something his wife came out and said, and it was just. I'm sure he made a shit ton of money off of the whole fiasco because his website went from 1998 to 2098, high tech, and he was selling these volumes, and you could buy all of the downloads, all the issues as a download for $179 or something. It was just crazy town. But
did he sell out?
No. He's still the man. He's there was word about a cartoon in development, but then he pulled the plug because they wanted it to go this way and that way. If you do a search, I will put a link down below to his channel in the description. I have not checked in with him for a couple of years, but he just sits on a couch. He has metacarpal syndrome, so he has both of his hands are bent. Yeah. It's a bit of a sad story, for the state of us older guys getting older and not treating ourselves with the greatest sense of kindness that we should. And so people stand up and take a break, every 45 minutes in a deep breath. But I am being hyperbolic. But I have to say, there are few comics that are as great as Cerebus when it comes to historical. What's going on here? Why am I blurry? It comes to historical. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Cerebus was actually a parody of Conan the Barbarian,
well, that's
right?
What I'm trying to get into here. Here we go.
When it first began.
So, and this is what I just want to review. I'm not going to flip through every page, but ta-da! So this is 1977. What? Cerebus the Aardvark. Now, he's totally ripping on Barry Windsor Smith, which did Conan back in 1969 through early 70s. So, as much as Frank Frazzetta holds the mantle for the greatest appearance visually of Conan the Barbarian, Barry Windsor Smith is the one that brings him to life in comics. And so he also becomes the guy that the fanboys are emulating in order to tell their versions of sword and sorcery, or what was also referred to back then as science fantasy. So, but the reason I find him to be the greatest comic book artist is really for two reasons. The first reason is he made it to 300 issues and never missed a month. Okay.
incredible, and that ended in
Yep.
2004, I
Yep.
see.
Yep.
So that's an incredible
Then if you
achievement.
look at his growth, I'm just jumping here and I'm going to do a lot of this. If you look at his growth as an artist and writer, I can't find anybody that matches this amount of growth. I mean, here you go. Like even from here, look at this. That's Red Sonja or his. I forget what her name was. Like
Yeah.
Red something or Monica or something like
Hmm.
that. It's been a while since I read this, but you look at this page, and then I'm just going to jump up and then look at this page. I mean,
I'm
even
surprised.
it's just
Yeah.
and his love for black and white
And
printed
white
comic
and
books.
gray. Hmm.
I I don't even know if I can lend anything new to be said about it. And that's why I started with the hyperbolic, like, greatest comic book artist in the world. But
Well,
name me somebody in the United States of America, okay, who is equal to him.
well, you have a combination of different things. I mean, as far as just, artistic ability, I would say there's isolated examples, but
Like
as
who?
far as a combination, well, Jack Kirby is, to me, the
Who?
greatest of all time. So we can
Who?
Jack Kirby.
Never heard of him. Tell
we
me
can
more.
argue.
Tell me more about this
We can argue.
Jack Kilby. Tell me more about him.
Yeah. So what Cerebus did was, he started out just as a small time black and white indie comic, just like hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. And he kind of rose to the cream of the crop because he was very reliable, and his artwork grew. You can see, so if Kurt is showing us the very humble beginnings,
Yes.
where Cerberus isn't even drawn very well, and
It's like an
it's not
elephant.
even, it's not what Cerberus would end up with. But you do see, his humans are drawn pretty well,
Yeah.
right? So how can you draw, like, human figures and anatomy so well and draw cartoons so poorly, right? So, it's and then here you just see.
I say it's hard to put that in an answer in all sincerity. I don't. Jake. Hold on. One of the biggest things you and I have a great difference in is exactly this topic. I'm not in this for money, fame, power. I'm in it for personal expression. And I know it's a very sappy, sorry, artistic ways. I have left comics and the arts twice in my 40-year career, as a professional artist, with no sense of remorse or looking back on it. And it was for two reasons: the money. They were offers for doing things that had really nothing to do with being a creative person. But I knew I was going to have a greater sense of learning. When you, in my opinion, make big decisions, locking into a contract with a corporation, you really have to feel it out. Am I going to give them 2 years of my life? Because that's what you're doing. Because everything I've ever heard about artists jumping in bed with a corporation ends up being the artist spends more time with their attorneys fighting for some justification of how they can express themselves. I don't know. I don't know a story. I do not know a story that comes out cleaner than that. And so if you want to be an artist and you want to create, that's one thing. If you want to be a business person that owns an IP and creates a world, then that I think is very different. And I believe that's where you and I are a lot different, and why we work so well together, because I'm more than happy to let you take the reins to that. I'm not saying I'm going to sign any big deal if you came knocking on my front door. Oh, Warner Brothers wants to sign Turbo up. And I did. I don't know if I'd be all that happy about it, because terms are a lot of what, you get in the way of time to be able to express yourself. It's hard. It's hard because, other than, and this is coming immediately to mind, Todd McFarland is the number one comic book artist, I believe, that came in as a businessman first. And he's on record for saying it a million times. Even Rob Liefeld. And that was, but I think the funniest part of 90s comics, and the collapse because of Image, was these guys went to Marvel to take Marvel over, and they did, and they walked away. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. But I'm just saying, it's hard. It's hard to construct a balance in being the owner of an IP and managing it as a business person, and being the creator continuously, day in and day out, of that said IP. And I don't see them as an eye to eye thing. And it takes a very, very, very particular type of character to pull it off. And I think somebody like Dave Sim was smart enough, in a long running, looking down the road of, is it going to be really worth it? Is cash in my pot? They give you 100,000 of it, and 80,000 of it you spend in legal fees trying to help you make a creative decision that they don't want you to do. What the fuck's up with that? That's the kind of shit that happens. Well, just to jump into that, because I do Conan the Barbarian. That's something that it's always a passion for me. And I sought out Conan the Barbarian as a public domain character, and there's at least 4 other individuals that are doing Conan the Barbarian, their own take on it, which I love. And I bought and maintain CronTheBarbarian.com and post their work when they send me updates in equal value. In other words, I'm not trying to own and create something in a like, you can't play with it either kind of sensibility. And I think that's a huge problem. And we were just talking about in episode 75 of Making Turbo Pit Fighter, where, when these things go into the public domain, like Batman and Superman, they're gonna fight. But what the hell are they fighting for? So 1952 and 1976 Superman can still hold its weight in it just doesn't make any sense to me. It really just doesn't. Yeah. 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 Oh, they have a whole, I forget what it's called. Ed Piskor goes like every year to Tokyo for this thing, Tokoban or something like that. It's a whole industry of illegal bootlegs. And I think he said it's like 70,000 people show up to this show. and it's like 100 or 200 or 300 creators, and they do everything from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to, Berserker to whatever it is. And there's printing companies that are just completely devoted to printing that stuff out. So they definitely operate under a different copyright law. But it's also, I think there's a sensibility that comes with like fan art, and you being able to do parody, like you can, do a bat and man character and have everything just right up to the the crossing the line and get away with it, and I think that's an important thing. So this would be great to see kind of picked up and moved, but I think unfortunately he's kind of casted a shadow over himself and therefore his work to really king. I want to say something else though, and we're already running a little over here, but I bought my comics from a shop called Between Books, and Greg Schauer owned that store, and he still has a little shop. But almost every time when I went down there once a month, if not twice a month, to pick up books, he and like 2 or 3 other people would be standing there at the register talking about Cerebus. They weren't talking about Spider-Man. They weren't talking about Batman. They weren't talking. Sometimes it was, if they were, it was always complaints. But it was one of the reasons I bought the book, was I was hoping it, as I grew up, I would be able to hold a conversation with these what appeared to be smarter people. But he really, with this, it's unchallenged, and I will be more than happy to hear anybody say something in the comments. But when I say greatest American comic book, it's really, really hard to put anything up to the light. And I'm even just getting more and more speechless just by flipping through and seeing, all of this. So I think we need to start getting to what you have, and if you want to carry, because what you have, I know what it is, and we could probably even carry over because it's a action packed set of stuff in there. All right, we're back from Weirdo World. We don't know what happened, but we're moving over to Mr. Jake Jacobs and his unveiling of.
So it was a fascinating discussion about Dave Sims. It really connects to the larger world of comics. We're going to go European here a little bit, and we're going to talk about Heavy Metal #1. This was a comic that really changed the landscape here in America because it introduced some kind of like high quality sequential art that was a lot more mature, sometimes adult, that spawned a lot of imitators, including Epic Comics and 1984. And it really brought over the idea that we can translate some of these really good European artists. This famous cover from April 1977 shows a robot beating the crap out of another robot. And the origin story for this series, Heavy Metal, we touched on it briefly, but there was a French magazine that had all the same kind of similar things inside that was been publishing since 1974. The makers of the National Lampoon, which was a guy by the name of, right here, Leonard Mogul. He traveled over to Europe in search of something that he could translate over to the U.S. market that was similar to National Lampoon. which was kind of like a parody magazine, but it also had a very, very rich comic section in the back that they were famous for. And so what he found was Metal Erlang. This kind of origin story is very weirdly written here in the introductory issue. And you can see that the pages are kind of yellowish. I don't think they started out like this. I don't know how bright white they were, but from 77 to now, this is magazine paper, kind of like glossy paper. But Leonard Mogul brings this back and he says, "Hey, let's just start making. We'll bring over some of the European stuff, but we'll start making comics in the same vein." And he tapped the following creators for the first issue: Richard Corbin, who's American, and then Druyer, Diana and Gal, Mobius, Macedo, Terry Brooks, who are American. They really just have like an article, not a feature. Michel Pearson and Voss, Miseris, Rubington, Montayer, Von Baudet. The front cover is by Nicolet. So it's very heavy on the European stuff. And this design here is very cool. This was made into a T-shirt that they offered. Um, we've spoken at length about Richard Corbin.
And
This is
we
no
will
different.
continue to speak like.
Yes, and if you watch Cartoonist Kayfabe, they just did a big feature on the reissue of Den because Richard Corbin died, and his wife is finally allowing reprints. So there is a treasury edition now of Den that has come out. That and this was just the beginning. Heavy Metal was serializing Den for many, many issues. I would even say years probably. Um, some of it was adult, but it's not really dirty. And
Nah.
it's all about the
Boobies.
fantasy of a kid who enters another world, and he's this like idealized character. They eventually bring another character in. If you want to go over the Den saga, check out that that edition of Cartoonist Kayfabe. They really go through it, along with Jeff Darrow, by the way. So he's become a
Yeah.
regular.
Yeah.
Here you can see some of the real black and white stuff. So this is like sci-fi stuff. You have kind of like this, this really rich black and white style, and here too, um, this is called Conquering Army, and this is by Diana and Gal. Um, which sound European to me. This is a great story here, and
Oh,
some
gosh.
unbelievable artwork, and a
Woo.
total Twilight Zone ending. You can just see how much work is poured into this. And here, everything is either black or white. There's no midtones, and there's not even too much on the shading. He does some shading, but he'll just like kind of feather it into heavy blacks.
Reminds me
So
of John Bolton.
yeah, John Bolton has that style too. Very similar, but also this is also very architectural and also very kind of like organic. I mean, heavily influenced by
Drulier.
uh-huh and
Yeah, his
Gal.
name is Drulier. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
and
love it.
this is a great long story. There's some ass kicking violence and there's also a great Twilight Zone ending. Um, we have a Frazzetta ad here where you can buy Ariel, the Book of Fantasy, with all these different contributors. I've never seen that, but they have a Frazzetta cover. Only $5.95 for Ray Bradbury, Corbin, Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, Moorcock, Hellison, and Frazzetta. Jumping into another story here, black and white. This looks more along the lines of like Frank Thorne, maybe. But it's a
Rough.
great style. He's got a very scratchy style that just works. Also, kind of like the sumi. This reminds me of the Japanese sumi in some places where the spot blacks are coming in. Um, good storytelling, and it's about this guy that comes into this weird city, and they're like auctioning off slaves, and only then does he realize, that the inhabitants are not actually human, and this says to be continued. This brings us into our Mobius feature, and it's the
Da,
famous
da,
Arzak
da.
character. You
Yeah.
can look back on our episodes of Comics That Influence if you want to see Kurt talking about Mobius. Mobius is actually a guy that runs a clinic here on stippling and mark making. You know, with these kind of like directional hatching lines, and then blending it together with stippling. I have examples of him in my art class slideshows. You know, doing these kind of hatching, like I call it contour hatching, but it's like curved lines. You know, also kind of like augmented by stippling. This is colored, and I'm not sure the process here, but these look like alcohol markers to me. You know, it could be gouache, could be other things, but you know, it's really like deep colors, and the storytelling here is great because there's very little
You don't
dialogue.
think they're like Doc Martin uh,
Pigments
colorings? Yeah, the
could be, it
pigments.
could be a combination of things. You know, it would be great to see a documentary on how you get there.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, but you know, but it doesn't have the airbrushing. Corbin really, you know, puts in airbrushing, and he was kind of inventing new things too, you know, as he went along, because you know this is not the regular comic book production where you have other people coloring it and they're cutting films and running CMYK process. This is artwork that seems to me to be created in color, and then they basically just take a photograph of it and then separate that into CMYK printing plates. This one, Selenia, is a great sci-fi hit here, and it's these.
Yes.
It's kind of like an alien type of story where they land on this planet and they go exploring, um, and antics ensue. Look at this. You know, I'd love to think this was inspired by Jack Kirby, but they really just take it into a whole other direction. You
Well,
know,
it's
this
like Jack Kirby meets Alien. You
right,
know the movie
and
and that.
you know, then we have some nudity here. Then we have some fight scenes here. You know, there's a lot going on. You do have this kind of like airbrushed effect here. You know,
Yes,
all these
love it.
background panels have these airbrushed effect, and you know, airbrush was really new back then. They were really going for it. So there's that going on. This is also to be continued, I believe. No, this ends the story. You know, this is kind of like the Twilight Zone ending where they're all turned into these kind of like robot beings. And I love the design of the mechanical stuff. It's not just like functional; it's also like very aesthetic. Um, great, great little story here, self-contained story, and maybe we should try to look up to see if this artist has done anything else that we can feature. But this was Selenia by the artist Mare and Macedo. I think Macedo is a name that we've seen on the covers before. Um, but that was a great feature. Here is Terry Brooks going off on the sword of Shannara, which was this was a very famous. I don't know how it holds up today, but this was a great kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien inspired fantasy series where they had all these books come out and they had the covers done by the Hildebrandt brothers, who are fantastic painters, you know, very kind of imaginative but very, you know, good multicolor, you know, lighting sequences and great effects. Here you can see, you know, these are all supposed to be kind of like elves and dwarves and archers, and you know, this is very Tolkien inspired. In fact, is this like a picture of a Tolkien scene maybe?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because the
No,
sword of
well,
Shannara.
no. No, that is the sword of
Oh no,
Shannara. I'm
this is the
sorry.
sword of Shannara. I
Yeah,
mean,
because it
it's
is.
based.
It's a complete rip off. Is really
Yeah.
what it came down to.
Well, you say it in
Um,
such a bad way.
no. I there's millions of them out there. I mean, when you have something as great as the Lord of the Rings, it just doesn't. It does everything to get you to write your own. And I've heard nothing but good stuff. I tried to read the first book, and I just I
I
couldn't
never got
connect
into.
with it. Back, and we're talking like in the 80s. So I mean,
Yeah, I never got into
I'd have
Sword
to
of
bring it
Shannara,
back
but
into the
I
fold.
did get into Hildebrand. I do collect their images on my computer, especially as examples of how to do multicolored lighting. Here's your heavy metal T-shirts in the inaugural issue. You can buy, uh, all these different designs from all these different artists in color. I bet those shirts are worth something today. T-shirt market is a lot is very vibrant for vintage T-shirts. Here is Michelle and the writer Pearson inking by Voss. Michelle and Voss, and look at this style, right? So this is another interesting black and white style that kind of has like very very like parallel, very considered shading directional lines, but then also heavy lights and darks, kind of like rounding.
It like Spain Rodriguez hits me first when I see that,
Yeah,
but then it's not as like edgy. It's
yeah.
softer in the contours of in
There's
contrast to
so
his
many
work.
great black and white comic artists, in these days,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think the thing that heavy metal did differently was they put it on glossy paper so that
yeah.
it had a very kind of like polished look, as opposed to the comic paper, which was matte or sometimes even just newsprint,
Well,
and it
just
immediately
newsprint, like
start.
the Warren magazines were all newsprint.
Right. What happens is it starts disappearing over time, just gets darker and darker, and the contrast, gets less and less. But you can see, even though these pages are toning on the edges, it really holds up, and it really puts the artwork in its best light, I think. I love here the you have all of this kind of like rippling in the water, but they intersperse the black and the white in a very interesting way, and they're really doing the black and the white as interplay, and they're the sacrificing realism for that, kind of like dynamic balance, right, of black and white interplay. Here you see the stripes on the costumes, and you're seeing this again and again. Look, I still have the postcard bound in. So when I sell this on eBay, the condition's pretty good. It's just, I think I set the price too high. I didn't get a bid. This might
What
even
did you
be on
put it? What
eBay.
did you put it at?
I think I started at like $49.
Whoa!
Yeah, because there's some completed items where it's sold for much more, 80, 60s. Depends on condition. But
Yeah.
here's the final. I think this is the final feature, Space Punks, and this looks very European to me. It's fully colored. It's got a lot of this stuff going on where there's real dramatic shading and coloring. There's like intense lighting, to really add to everything. They're going on some kind of space journey here, so you have your spacecraft, you have your interiors, your mechanical designs, your spacesuits. They're loaded up with weapons, and then maybe this is a little post-apocalyptic where they're scorching these lands, and then they invade. They're kind of like taking out these characters here. Not too wordy considering, that very little, you know, there's very little dialogue and narration here. They're just letting the pictures do the talking. Self-contained story. It looks like the conquerors kind of take over this land. And here is this a one pager? Yeah, there's a one pager. Kurt loves one pagers.
Yeah. Always looking for
Um,
it.
this is the end of the article, the Shannara article, and then here we're getting into some strange artwork that looks like it's kind of like retro.
It's
Um,
collaging.
yeah, and this very very thin. I they might have even been using rapidograph on this, but it could be just be pen
No,
and ink with a very
it's the
steady
old
hand.
it's from the old Dover books where they had like the free like
Right. Well, you're talking about the magic.
etchings.
Yeah, the etchings, but they also had the magic motion books where you would take this screen, and there was like a
Ah,
little
yeah, yeah,
plastic screen that was in the pocket, and then you would take it and
yeah,
put it over every
yeah,
picture, and you would get this
yeah.
undulation effect. Remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right. But yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing. Like, there's some captions here, and I think, this is some kind of like sequential story that they're doing here. I haven't read it, but it's definitely retro art. Here is your subscription page where you can subscribe for $18 for 1 year. That's 12 issues. Pretty expensive for 1977. Um, and then we get to another one pager here by the same guy. And finally, we got our Von Baudet. So there are some people that are collectors of Von Baudet. This is not a I mean, it is, I guess it's sequential, but here they have some schematics of the Sunpot ship. So, he's in outer space, um, and he's doing his famous characters, these were all co-opted by the New York City graffiti movements. He's introducing all of his characters, and then we get into chapter one, where there's only like 3 pictures on a page, and antics ensue. Um, it says continued next issue. So this is typical Von Baudet. Sometimes he has his word balloons underneath. That's an interesting thing, which he invented. They're kind of like captions, but they have the box and the tails at the same time. And his inimitable style. He was using markers. I can tell, and I know the brand of markers. You remember those little stubby markers with the thin metal caps?
Yep.
Yeah, and they like smell very, very strong. They're alcohol markers.
Yeah, I
So
don't think
this
they have
is
them anymore.
no, they don't make them anymore. Now they make like Chart Pack and those other brands that are like $4 a marker. Finally, we get here into a black and white story with gray tones, gray washes. You can see, the water effect on it, and then it's a little unpredictable the way it's going to reproduce. I'm seeing some wrinkling here on these pages. I should probably mention that in my description. I didn't even realize that was there. But that's the final story here, and it kind of ends with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck parodies. I think they're targeting this house from a spaceship. Uh, Mad Killer Strikes Again. So yeah, who knows what's going on? Very, very kind of like thought-provoking stuff. Here, there's a huge ring of. So I'm gonna have to update my description. The condition of this is much worse than I thought. Um,
That's a Drouillet.
yeah, this is Drew, but somebody has a big ring of a coffee cup that was sitting here maybe for years. because so I am trying to sell this, but I'll see. I might only get like $30 for it, and I've had it for a long time. Some of these things sell, for in the '80s, but I think people are looking for really, really mint copies or VG copies,
Oh
which
yeah.
we just don't have here. There's even some scoring here, so I just put the condition as good, and that is my report. Heavy Metal has been coming out ever since we spoke about last week that they were acquired by Whatnot in conjunction with another comic company that's producing. I think they're called, what were they called? Many or I forgot the name, but Heavy Metal is right now involved in some kind of like politics over the ownership and the direction of the series. So that's all I got. But I know we want to try to get out of this quick, but
Yep. Yep.
folks can check out our other channel, Turbo Pit Fighter, the making of, and you can order our teaser, the first 6-page sampler, so you can see what it's like. And these will be instant collectibles because once we come out with the next teaser, the first teaser, this is actually the first thing that we're putting out under Doom Magazines and under Turbo Pit Fighter. So go ahead and grab that. And Kurt, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, no, we definitely want to get more people involved in our indie comic exchange community. We've been doing interviews. Next week, we will be having Dan Snook from Rave Sensation. He has his own YouTube channel. We tried last week and we ran into some technical difficulties, so we're going to hammer that out. But basically, it's really easy. There's a link down below where you can fill out a form, and then we'll exchange comics, and then we'll set some time up where we all get together and we talk about comics, making them, how to promote them, and the futures of them. But other than that, Jake, let's let these people get back to reading comics, making them if that's what they do. I'll see you next Sunday.
Later, guys.